tribal nations of Oklahoma contribute $15.6 billion to the economy. Mr. Justin Ahasteen, how'd I do with that?
Mr. Ahasteen, I said it better, didn't I?
All I say is that you just fake laugh and add Steen at the end.
Okay.
In order for us to pave 1 mile of road is $3 million.
As I often say, only those who live it truly understand it. Mr. Ahasteen.
That's insane.
The Subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs will come to order. Today's hearing is entitled Economic Diversification to Create Prosperous Tribal Economies. Today we will hear from tribal stakeholders on ways tribes have diversified their economies to create jobs, revenue, and opportunities that benefit tribes, tribal members, and their communities. Since the 1970s, the federal government has embraced a tribal policy of self-determination which supports tribal governments to self-direct both services provided to their people and economic development plans that support tribal government services. Tribes have consistently sought to diversify their tribal economies through various means so that they can expand services to tribal members and build sustainable economies to benefit current and future generations. Many tribes have pursued agriculture, gaming, natural resource development, business ventures, tourism, and other avenues to build their economies. For example, the collective tribal nations of Oklahoma contribute $15.6 billion to the economy and 113,442 jobs in 2019 alone.
Because we need to start manufacturing in America what we need in America, and it can be done on tribal lands just as well, and oftentimes with better results and better opportunities than off-tribal lands because of unique situations that tribe bring to the equation.
I will now introduce our witnesses for our panel. Mr. Justin Ahasteen, how'd I do with that? Is the Executive Director for the Navajo Nation, Washington Office, Washington, D.C. Ms. Sherry Rupert, CEO, American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I also would like to recognize Mr. Huffman for 1 minute to introduce the witness from his district.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I'm proud to introduce Raymond Bacon. He's the Executive Director of Economic Development for the Yurok tribe in my district. It is California's largest Native American tribe.
I will now introduce our witnesses for our panel. Mr. Justin Ahasteen, how'd I do with that? Is the Executive Director for the Navajo Nation, Washington Office, Washington, D.C. Ms. Sherry Rupert, CEO, American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I also would like to recognize Mr. Huffman for 1 minute to introduce the witness from his district.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I'm proud to introduce Raymond Bacon. He's the Executive Director of Economic Development for the Yurok tribe in my district. It is California's largest Native American tribe.
I'd like to ask Mr. Ahasteen, Ms. Rupert, and Mr. Bacon, because I think, Mr. Morgan, you've given us some good ideas in terms of this next question I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask each of you to respond to this question. What have you found is particularly helpful for rural communities to expand tribal economic diversification, and what challenges and opportunities particularly exist in the more rural areas? Mr. Ahasteen?
I think what you really have to understand is in rural areas, the cost of anything is about doubled. And without taking that into consideration, I'll give you an example. In order for us to pave 1 mile of road is $3 million. And that's insane because we have to literally purchase materials that are off the nation. We don't have access to our own resources because it's just become a bureaucratic nightmare in trying to request, even for technical assistance from the Department of the Interior at times to develop the mineral and leasing regulations that it requires. And as we have stated in a previous testimony, one of the other challenges involved is if we start going the route to exercise our self-determination, then we lose all access to some of the federal resources, including the data sets. And that is really concerning to us because, Navajo Nation, when we requested to start implementing some of our leasing regulations for minerals, we wanted to start off with 1 or 2 minerals. We don't want to adopt the entire thing, but it just seems that the position of the federal government is you have to adopt all of it. And that causes problems for us because there are different minerals that require us to really think about how we're going to develop a comprehensive, essentially an environmental policy within our own nation. So if we could figure out a way to reduce some of those bureaucratic red tapes to access some of our resources to help reduce construction costs for infrastructure, that would really help out.
Wonderful, good ideas. And Ms. Rupert, what are some of the challenges and what are some of the things that you have found particularly helpful?
So challenges, this is all connected, right? Economic development, and talked about roads. You have to have roads in order for visitors to come out and experience your attraction or your destination. So that's always a huge barrier as well. But I look at cultural tourism as an opportunity for our rural communities, for our rural tribes. There's not too much infrastructure that is needed for cultural tourism. It's all about our people and our stories and our places. And that's what I always tell, tribes that are struggling. Well, who would want to come see us? And it's the international market that is very interested in coming and experiencing our culture. Okay. So it is us, it is our people that people want to come and see and experience.
I like that story. I don't think anyone else has ever said it the way that you have, and I appreciate the way that you have put that. And maybe there are ways that we can help from the tourism standpoint. Very quickly, Mr. Bacon, if you have some ideas on this, and then I'm going to give a challenge to all 4 of you before we leave today. So, Mr. Bacon, some of the challenges and some of the things that have worked.
Thank you for that question. With Yurok economic development, particularly helpful for us is developing our own workforce. And that's the main focus, is developing our staff. It's, as we describe it, it's grow your own, because no one really wants to live in the rural areas or move to the rural areas. The challenges that we have in the rural area is the lack of housing, adequate housing that's not HUD funded. So in order to attract these individuals that are highly qualified, we need adequate housing within our area. Development would be a beneficial factor.
And Mr. Morgan, you've also given us some ideas of both the challenges and the things that have actually worked. So here's my challenge to all 4 of you. Have you identified the top 5 things that we could do as Congress within your particular areas? I know that every one of your reservations and the areas that you represent are very different from each other. But what I'd like to do is find a way to legislatively address the barriers that you have. We have them when we develop in Wyoming, whether it's oil and gas on the reservation or it's oil and gas off the reservation on BLM lands. We have challenges with those barriers as well. What I'd like to do is, every one of you have brought a very interesting story today about what your needs are and what has worked for your individual members. What I'd like you to do is bring to us the solutions, legislative solutions you think that we could do to help you to address the fact that you've got an enormous reservation, the fact that you might have more of an urban area, the fact that you've got the challenges with the tourism and not being able to access some of the resources that other people can. Help us to help you. Help us to come up with ideas for legislation, because I'm all ears. If you want to come to my office and sit down and talk about ways that we can draft bills that will work for you, I want to talk about it.
Mr. Bacon, your testimony and what your tribe is doing is just amazing. The range of activities that you're engaged in, which I think really is key, and each of you have described the importance of the diversification. One thing I want to touch on, because it is something that is looming, is the Affordable Connectivity Program and funding for that, which we know is essential, especially in Indian country where there is such a gap with regards to access. That is set to expire at the end of April. There are those, the entire Democratic caucus wants to renew it. We know we have some Republicans who want to see it renewed. But Tell us, what would it mean if that word expires, since you're in that business?
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member. So currently, we're still in the development phase of our telecommunications corporation. We're looking to provide access to approximately 1,000 households within our service area. One thing that we have seen and we acknowledge is the service area is a checkerboard of classified as low income. It's kind of mixed in between. If there were, I do see that there would be a negative effect on tribal communities if that were to expire.
Thank you. Mr. Ahasteen, thank you as always for coming and sharing the stories of your very large reservation, your very large and wonderful and diverse Dene experiences. You pointed out that, I mean, the reality, I liked this interrupted progress that you described, right? And that some of the policies and resource development has left a bad legacy. You know, I will continue to fight for the RICA amendments. We are not giving that up because the uranium mining we need to address that. You pointed out that oil and gas has been a mixed bag, has maybe left more bad than good. But we're looking forward. Like, what do we do next, even as we try to address some of what's left behind, the forward-looking? I really appreciated that you gave us very specific examples of a solution, right, in each of yours of what do we do with DOE. You had that in your written testimony, but can you sort of share with us a little bit of what you would like us to focus on? You had, I think, maybe 5 different proposals, but what do you want us to hear this morning?
Thank you, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez. So really what we want to address is the jurisdictional barriers that limit our progress in being able to exercise our full self-determination. And that's, again, focusing on giving tribes the exclusive jurisdiction to manage their affairs. It seems a little redundant that we have to obtain 3 different environmental clearances for the same project, and that the federal agencies are not talking or working with one another. And one of those specific examples is with a lot of our road projects with the Navajo Department of Transportation. The Federal Highways Administration will go through their clearance processes, but then the BIA will require processes on their own and will not accept federal highways as environmental clearance documents. So that's just a barrier. And on top of that, we have tribal law. So the Navajo Nation does its own environmental clearance review as well. So having to go through 3 different environmental clearance processes, 3 different right-of-ways is sometimes challenging depending on, a lot of the jurisdictional barriers.
Right. And some of the potential solutions that each of you actually set and gave us in your written testimony, I think are things that we can work on from why don't they include the entire Navajo Nation, in the MLS, right? There are certain ways in which we can address issues.
Mr. Ahasteen, I said it better, didn't I? Tell the Madam Chairwoman I said it better.
All I say is that you just fake laugh and add Steen at the end.
Okay. I've been a county commissioner for 8 years. Prior to this job, I've built many a mile of road, and I'm telling you, $3 million for a mile of road is outrageous. And I understand. Nothing else comes out of this meeting. I understand your frustrations with that. So I'm open to help you in any way I can. With that said, thank you for joining us today. It's really great to have someone who understands, I'm still talking to you, sir, understands the challenges facing the tribal communities firsthand. As I often say, only those who live it truly understand it. And I think everyone in this room understands what I'm saying there. For decades, federal government has been working towards self-determination of the tribes, allowing them to manage their own services and economic plans. Tribes have been trying different ways to diversify their economy to benefit their members, create a substantial system. But there's a lot of red tape and unclear rules that make it tough for them to start businesses and to grow. So Mr. Ahasteen How can Congress do more to support tribes in making their own development, especially when it comes to broadening their economics and dealing with all the regulations? What can we do to help that?
So one of the priorities of President Nygren has been to really identifying and addressing what specific jurisdictional barriers are preventing us. One of the, I think, the main issues is, again, the exclusive authority to actually conduct our businesses free of, restrictions by the federal government and at times state governments, depending on, again, which project that you're working on. But even a lot of the funding that has come out that is supposed to benefit tribes, we find it based off of policies that haven't been updated in 20-plus years that really restrict the tribe's abilities to access those dollars. And one of the examples is the tax credits that were made available under the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Navajo Nation not being able to utilize that because of a non-metropolitan statistical area or a metropolitan statistical area definition that actually includes counties with, tribal data. And, some of the border towns are doing well. Flagstaff, Coconino County has probably the highest income for the Arizona region, but yet that's grouped in with some of the reservation territories like Loop, who is significantly economically disadvantaged. So being disqualified from the tax credits that were meant to actually benefit tribal communities is something that I think is an unintended consequence. So I think really just taking a look back at all of the regulations and having appropriate consultation with the federal agencies to updating a lot of those statistical area mapping, I think would very well benefit tribes and helping us move forward in securing our future, especially in the energy sector.
Thank you. Mr. Bacon, real quick, yesterday I had one of the tribes come in my office and talk to me about the small business loans and the fear of where this is going on the small business side. They basically were rating a particular tribe no longer as a small business. Can you give me some idea what the impact is going to be from that?
Congressman, you're referring to the SSBCI?
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So we were one of the tribes that received the SSBCI. Actually, we were one of the first to receive that funding source. One of the challenges in receiving that funding source was there was a requirement of match funds. And, most tribes are new to the lending capacity side of things. So you're subject to what your lending capacity is from previous. So with the Yurok tribe, our lending capacity was at $1.2 million, which is not much, but part of that is we had to have discretionary funds to match that $1.2 million. So really, we didn't build a big, giant fund, but we're trying to leverage that to be successful and fund other tribal initiatives. There is a bit of a challenge with it. If the matching funds didn't exist, it would be quite successful.
Would you reach out to my office and see what we can do to work together and see if we can get that addressed?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Madam Chair, thank you.
I want to just ask you if you could speak to how funding from programs like the Scenic Byways program has actually helped facilitate some of your work at this intersection of economic development and natural resource protection.
Thank you for that question, Congressman. The Scenic Byways program has been a real benefit to the Yurok tribe. We're fortunate enough to have a strong relationship with federal and state agencies. We're able to acquire the funds through the Scenic Byways program, which we use to develop a visitor center. The center provides an opportunity to tell our story for the Yurok people and our members to express their artistic talents and sell goods within that visitor center. This also is a platform for ecotourism. We're fortunate enough to be able to run a business of Redwood Yurok canoe tours, and this is a scenic ecotourist business that takes you on a journey down the Klamath River and connects you with what really the Yurok people are about, which is the Klamath River. So we like that relationship with the federal and state agencies, and we continue to maintain that relationship.
And I've seen some of the great work that the Yurok Construction Company is doing, and I've also seen young people who have come up through your workforce development efforts and are operating heavy equipment, restoring Redwood Creek and other areas in ways that will enhance that fishery, build on the ecotourism. Could you speak a little bit about how that construction enterprise is contributing to your economic development, and also the issue of food sovereignty? I know that we haven't talked a lot about that yet, but you've got a unique partnership with CalFresh that is doing some interesting and innovative things that are helping address food sovereignty.
Absolutely. So we know the Klamath salmon is a vital source of subsistence for the Yurok tribe. As we say, the Yurok tribe doesn't exist without salmon. And it's who we are as a people. With the decline of the salmon population, we've made a strong pivot towards the restoration efforts in the preservation of salmon. It's always been a priority of our tribe. The restoration effort is spearheaded by the Yurok Construction Corporation and our fisheries division for the tribe. Currently, they're working on replanting and reseeding as the waters come down from the dams and the reservoirs are exposed. So there's a massive effort going on right now to plant traditional plants, native plants within that area, trees, oak trees, the shrubbery that takes place and holds the banks stable for the river to ebb and flow. The benefits of this is we hope to see that the salmon return immediately. And the long-term benefit is our effort to restore an entire ecosystem to thrive as it once did in the beginning. You had mentioned the relationship with CalFresh. Since COVID had come into play here, we recognized that there was a shortage of food storage in the upper part of our reservation. So we were fortunate enough to partner with CalFresh to install a small solar grid that supported refrigeration. In that effort, the refrigeration units allowed us to partner with our food sovereignty program. Our food sovereignty program grows fresh vegetables that are seasonal. In return, that allows us to distribute those healthy foods back to our tribal membership. So we were really appreciative to have that relationship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yield back.
Without objection, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you.